This is a dream of Saint John Bosco, which was a spectacular symbolic revelation of the future of the Salesian missions in South America. A future of epic grandeur, foreseen by those who knew Don Bosco's work and realized that he was a force not merely human. It's an extensive vision, which revealed parts of South America that hadn't even been charted yet and were later proved to be accurate. So join us for our multi-part series about Don Bosco's prophecies concerning the future of his Salesians in South America. The Miracles and Prophecies of Saint John Bosco, a project of America Needs Fatima. I'm your host, Matthew Miller. Subscribe for new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Don Bosco told this dream on September 4th at the morning session of the General Chapter. Father Lemoyne immediately put it into writing, which Don Bosco critically read from beginning to end, making some additions and modifications. Don Bosco recounted his dream in the following words. On the night before the feast of St. Rose of Lima, August 30th, I had a dream. I was aware that I was sleeping, and at the same time I seemed to be running very, very much, so much so that I was exhausted with running, talking, writing, and wearing myself out and carrying out the rest of my other regular responsibilities. While I was deliberating whether this was a dream or reality, I seemed to enter a recreation hall, where I found many people standing about and discussing various topics. A lengthy conversation centered on the hordes of savages in Australia, the Indies, China, Africa, and more especially America, who in countless numbers are presently entombed in the darkness of death. Europe, said one of the speakers with much conviction. Christian Europe, the great mistress of civilization and Catholicism, seems to have lost all interest in the foreign missions. Few are those who have enough enthusiasm to brave long journeys and unknown lands to save the souls of millions of people redeemed by the Son of God, Jesus Christ. Another said, how many idolaters in America alone live miserably outside the church, far from the knowledge of the gospel? People keep thinking that the American Cordillera is like a wall blocking off that huge section of the world. It's not so. That interminable chain of lofty mountains contains many plains, 600 and more miles in length alone. In them are forests, as yet unexplored, plants and animals, and also ores rarely found elsewhere. Coal, oil, lead, copper, iron, silver, and gold lie hidden in those mountains where they were secreted by the all-powerful hand of the Creator for the good of humanity. Oh, Andes, Andes, how steeped in wealth is your eastern flank. At that moment, I felt an urgent desire to ask for an explanation of many things and to find out who those persons gathered there were and where I was. But I said to myself, before speaking, you must find out what kind of people these are. In all curiosity, I gazed about at them. Practically all of these people were total strangers to me. In the meantime, as though they were seeing me for the first time, they invited me to step forward and welcomed me kindly. I asked them, please tell me where we are. Are we in Turin, London, Madrid, or Paris? Where are we? Who are you? With whom do I have the pleasure of speaking? But they all gave me vague answers while they kept talking about the missions. During this time, I was approached by a young man of about 16, fascinating for his superhuman beauty and aglow with a brilliance more intense than that of the sun. His garment was woven with heavenly richness, and on his head he wore a cap shaped like a crown, studded with the most sparkling precious stones. Fixing his kindly gaze upon me, he showed keen interest in me. His smile reflected a love that had its own irresistible attraction. He called me by name, then took my hand and began speaking to me about the Salesian congregation. I was thrilled by the sound of his voice. At one point I interrupted him and asked, with whom do I have the honor of speaking? Do me the kindness of telling me your name. The young man replied, don't be worried. Speak with utter trust. You're with a friend. But what is your name? I asked him. I would tell you my name if it were necessary, he replied, but I don't have to, because you should know me. Saying this, he smiled. I took a better look at that countenance, flooded with light. How handsome a face! And then I recognized the son of Count Florito, Colle of Toulon, a distinguished benefactor of our house, and especially of our American missions. This young man had died a short time before. "Oh, it's you!" I exclaimed. "Louis! And who are all these others?" "They're friends of your Salesians, and as your friend, I would like, in God's name, to give you a bit of work." But before we continue with the rest of the dream, I'd just like to say that if you'd like to enroll in our Saturday Mass intentions for the promoters of Saint John Bosco, just click on the link in the description below. Or you can wait till the end of the video and click on the logo that should appear on the screen. "But what do you mean? What's this work?" "Sit at that table," he ordered, "and pull that rope." In the middle of that vast hall stood a table on which lay a coil of rope. It resembled a tape measure marked with lines and numbers. Later, I also came to realize that the hall itself was situated in South America, straddling the equator, and that the numbers marked on that rope corresponded to the degrees of latitude. I therefore took the end of the rope, looked at it, and saw that the tip was marked 0. I smiled. That angelic lad remarked, "This is no time to smile. Look carefully at what's written on the rope. It says 0. Pull it a bit," he ordered. I pulled it a little, and up came the number 1. "Pull more and wrap the rope into a big coil." I did so, and out came the numbers 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 20. "Is that enough?" I asked. "No, pull more, pull more. Pull until you find a knot," the lad answered. I pulled up to the number 47, where I came across a big knot. From this knot, the rope continued, but it was split into smaller strands that fanned out to the east and west and south. "Is that enough?" I asked. "What's the number?" the youth answered. "It's 47. "What's 47 plus 3? He queried. 50, I responded. "Now add 5 more. 55, I responded. "Take note," he said. 55. He then told me, "Pull some more." "Well, now I've reached the end," I replied. "Now then, reverse the process and pull the rope from the other end." I did so until I reached the number 10. "Pull more," the lad told me. "There's nothing left." "What? Nothing?" he said. "Take a closer look. What do you see?" "I see water," I replied. Indeed, at that moment, I felt something very strange happening to me which I can't explain. I was present in that hall. I was pulling that rope, and at the same time I saw unfolding before my eyes the vision of an immense country, over which I was hovering like a bird in flight. And the more the cord was pulled, the farther out did the view stretch. From 0 to 55, I saw a vast mainland, the end of which broke up into 100 islands, one of them very much larger than the others. It seemed that the strands which came from the big knot of the rope stretched out to these islands, so that every strand was anchored to one. Some of these islands were inhabited by fairly large numbers of natives. Others were barren, empty, rocky, uninhabited. Others were all blanketed in snow and ice. Toward the west were numerous groups of islands inhabited by many savages. It would appear that the knot situated at the number or degree of 47 symbolized the point of departure, the Salesian center, the principal mission from which the missionaries branched out to the Falkland Islands, Tierra del Fuego, and the other islands of those American countries. That same mainland stretched out from the opposite end of the rope, that is, from 0 to 10, until it reached the body of water which was as far as I could see. I thought that it was the Caribbean Sea which I was then gazing upon in a way so wondrous that I can't describe the way I saw it. As soon as I said, "I see water," the young man replied, "Now add 55 and 10. What's the sum?" 65, I answered. "Now join all together, and you'll make just one single rope." "And now?" I asked him. "From this side, what do you see?" he asked me in return, and he pointed to a spot on the panorama. "Well, to the west I see very lofty mountains, and to the east there's the sea." Please note that I was then seeing a summary, in miniature as it were, of what I later saw in its real grandeur and extent, as I shall narrate. The marks numbered on the rope, each corresponding precisely to the degree of latitude, were those which allowed me to keep in memory for several years the successive localities I visited as I traveled in the second part of this same dream. My young friend continued, "Very well. These mountains form a ridge or boundary. From here to there is the harvest assigned to the Salesians. Thousands and millions of people are awaiting your help, waiting for the faith. Those mountains were the South American Andes, and that ocean was the Atlantic. How will we ever manage?" I asked. "How will we succeed in bringing all these people into the flock of Christ?" If you'd like to hear the rest of the dream concerning the future of the Salesians, just subscribe and come back Monday. And don't forget, this is a link to enroll in our Saturday Mass intentions for the promoters of Saint John Bosco. Thank you all so much for watching. God bless you, and Our Lady keep you. I've got to take this guest star back inside. Don't worry, she didn't replace Griffin. It was just my parents' dog.